Hello, everybody. I have a special guest with us today, and I've got my special headset on so I don't shout and blow everybody in the house out, which I'm prone to doing. I want everybody to welcome onto my channel Nicole Brenny. Nicole is my go-to person whenever I'm freaking out.
That's true.
And Nicole always gives me really accurate information. So I just really, really highly recommend having a reading from Nicole. And if you're interested in learning the cards of truth, I also highly recommend learning cards of truth from her. Don't you have something that's starting soon?
Yes, I have my Cards of Truth study group, and we're starting on July 7th. And if you sign up by June 15th, then I will be able to use your birth information as examples in class. So that's like a 22-week / 22 lesson long course, very intensive. You learn the entire system.
Excellent.
Yeah. Oh, and I guess if you want to learn more about it and you want to sign up, go to NicoleBrenny.com/classes. I explain more about it there. And my YouTube channel also has videos about the class. And my YouTube channel is Listen to the Stars, just youtube.com/listen to the stars.
Excellent. And I'll put all that stuff in the video link as well for everybody. But we're going to talk today about the solar eclipse and something I really wanted to say before we get going. And, I had someone reach out to me like a week or so ago, and they were wondering if when there's an eclipse and it's not visible where you're at, they were thinking that it wouldn't impact you, right? And one thing I really want to tell people is eclipses will impact everybody, right? But let's talk about that concept of impact, because sometimes things impact you on a phenomenal level, and sometimes they impact you on a very minuscule level. And I think because people tend to talk about eclipses so strongly whenever there's an eclipse, that everybody has this mindset that an eclipse has to feel like it's this monumental thing. And sometimes eclipses will feel that way, and sometimes they won't feel that way at all. But one thing that they do, if you kind of watch them and study them and kind of let yourself be your own test subject with eclipses, is you'll notice that the 6 months after eclipses, changes happen in your life in accordance with the areas that eclipse is impacting in your horoscope. So they have a very powerful effect, but it's stretched out over time. And I was also explaining to the person that, Rahu transiting a sign, Ketu transiting a sign, that's a transit. And so the discussion was whether it's an actual transit or whether it's an omen. And in either case, it's something that's impacting you, and it's definitely a transit. It just may not be as notable in your horoscope unless it's setting off sensitive points in your horoscope, like forming a tense alignment with another planet, or unless it's happening in the angles of your chart that can make it really intense, or happening in the 6th, 8th, and 12th in your horoscope. And if it's doing that, and especially also triggering other planets, that's when it generally tends to be at its most powerful. So eclipses, like any other transit, even the moon transiting through a sign every day, is going to impact you on one level or another. It's just whether you're finding that that's something that's monumental, or whether that's something that's just kind of like, I hardly noticed it, right? It's still having an impact.
And I will say too that from my experience, whenever an eclipse or even a transit, but we're talking about eclipses, when an eclipse happens on one of your house cusps, which will mean that it's happening on 2 of your house cusps because it's going to be 180 degrees away, you'll really feel it. And that's actually, I feel like this is cool that we're having this conversation, because that's happening to me. Plus, with the Cards of Truth, like, this eclipse is very much impacting me. So I feel like I'm really like the sponge of this eclipse right now. So if you want to know about it, I am the person to ask.
Exactly, exactly. But that's the thing too. And this particular eclipse, from what I'm noticing with it, when we were talking about the lunar eclipse on the video we did not too long ago, because we did a video on the total lunar eclipse, that one probably is going to be one that felt much more like it had much more oomph to it. But because this eclipse is happening about a week after the culmination of a Mars-Pluto opposition, there's a certain level of surrendering to a process that's connected with this particular eclipse cycle. From what I'm seeing, it seems to be after kind of questioning your devotion to a particular area of your life or a particular person in your life, you're now reapproaching things and retweaking things, and you have an idea of what it is that you're wanting to, I guess I'd use the phrase cultivate or wanting to grow, but it can feel to you like the results that you're getting from the situation are less than fulfilling. You're not getting the level of fulfillment that you want, and you're appraising the situation probably in a I would say less than auspicious light. So in other words, I guess I would use the phrase poverty consciousness. You're going, I'm not getting as much out of this, or this isn't going where I wanted it to go. But still, you're recognizing a responsibility and something that you need to apply your energy to in a very devoted and determined manner. And really, on a certain level, that's what this particular solar eclipse on the day of the solar eclipse itself is, all about, which is dedication to a process, being dedicated to something, recognizing that just because things seem to be kind of going haywire, like, left, right, up, down, all over the place, it doesn't mean that you're going in the wrong direction with the particular situation. It just means you have to stay focused, and most likely you're in a process of refining your approach to whatever it is that you're doing. What did you find when you pulled some cards on the eclipse?
So this is a little complicated because depending on where we set the time and date, when I was doing it for Minneapolis, where I used to live, and set the time for Minneapolis, I was getting the 8 of diamonds as the card of this eclipse and the card of the day. And then we set it for the United Kingdom. We then got the 7 of diamonds. And the cool thing about that is, well, it's doing that because it's really close to sunrise time. So in Minneapolis, it's really close. So there must be some calculation happening there. But the great thing about kind of having that little discrepancy is that the 7 of diamonds is actually the ecliptic card. When you look at a spread, you have the 8 of diamonds at the top, and then the 7 of diamonds is the path that the 8 of diamonds walks on. So they're really hand in hand. So the 8 of diamonds works best when it has the 7 of diamonds energy. And then because we also have this 7 of diamonds card coming up for the eclipse, they're really similar. They're really similar. So I'm not really worried about this discrepancy, but what I would like to discuss is both of those cards for this eclipse. And I am an 8 of diamonds, so I can really explain what that energy is. And then my path is a 7 of diamonds, which I can also really explain that because that's the path that I walk on in my everyday life. And I really think it's funny because something that I study very intensely with the service that I offer called psychomagic is linguistics and the way people speak and what people say without really saying it with words, or without knowing that they're saying it. And one of the first sentences that came out of your mouth is, I don't want to blow everything up. Or you said, I don't want to blow everyone out with the headphones. And it was like, it's like so auspicious or so interesting that you said that, because the 8 of diamonds, which is one of the cards that is representative of this eclipse, I relate that to a volcano. And a volcano, because of the fact that volcanoes, they're like destructive and disastrous, and they're powerful and scary and all of that. But interestingly enough, diamonds come out of volcanoes. They shoot through the volcano, and you can actually find diamonds in the lava and the magma if you know where to look. It's a rare sort of thing that happens, but because of all the pressure of the carbon inside of the volcano, it creates diamonds, and diamonds are one of the strongest structures or strongest materials in the world. They can slice through things and all of that. They're also incredibly beautiful. And in this particular scenario of a volcano diamond, it's incredibly rare. So this eclipse, may or may not feel powerful when it happens. But the really interesting thing about this eclipse is that because the Eight of Diamonds is representative of it, it brings in this aspect of whatever changes as a result of this energy, it's something you can't really go back from. Like once that carbon is changed into a diamond, which takes a long, long time to happen, it can't go back to carbon. Or if it can, I don't know how, and it takes a long time to get back to that original state. And the other part about that too is that it might not feel so crazy because it's been a long time coming. And like I was already talking to Michael about my life and the things I'm experiencing. Some of them probably I won't share because it's just so deep. But these are like things that have been happening, since I was like a child, like things that are from my past and my history that I'm coming to an understanding of and trying to shift and change in my life just in a really conscious way. And if I do end up changing them as a result of like my own effort and the processes that have been happening during this eclipse time, that's like life changing. That I'll never go back to the way that things were. I can't. There's no way I can go back. And that is the kind of impact I would envision other people as well to experience that are being directly impacted by this eclipse, whether by cusp or planet or aspect. So it's like it's not like, oh, all of a sudden something happens crazy. I think it's like this has already been a long time coming. Now is just that moment of like not going back, and you've already felt the pressure, you've already felt the change, you've already felt the heat and the pressure, and now it's just like, I am done with this. I've had enough of this. Like you might hear yourself saying that, like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Like I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not going back to that anymore. It's enough. And you're ready for whatever that next thing is, even if it's like so different than what you've known. And the beautiful thing about that I think individuals should recognize is the fact that you yourself have become so strong and impenetrable and powerful through it all. So if you're dealing with a lot of stuff that's been going on for a long time, I think you need to also recognize and congratulate yourself and just give yourself that moment of acknowledgement of like how far you've come. And I've seen that in my clients already too, that I've worked with in the past week or so. But I would imagine people listening, there's some people that are like, yeah, that's exactly what's happening with me right now. Like having to deal with something for a long time and finally being able to make that shift. So that's with the Eight of Diamonds. And I can talk a little bit about the Seven of Diamonds too, if like that's a whole different energy.
Oh yeah, sure. I wanted to kind of step in though, because if you think about what's been going on in the world at large, and I was saying world at large, and here you're taking a drink out of a big cup, like right when I was
really
getting ready to say large. But I was getting ready to say, if you think about what's been going on in the world at large for about the last year or so, there's monumental changes that are happening for everybody. And I think as children, we go through this process, and even on into our adult years. But I think in our adult years, we're relating to it from the mindset of that innocence within ourselves, where when something seemingly goes in a way that we don't want for it to go, we want to go back and fix that moment. Yes. And, like go back to the way something once was, but we can never go back to the way that something once was. we, quite honestly, we have to change things from the moment that we're in, reapproach things in a different manner. It doesn't mean that, in whatever area of your life is being affected by this eclipse, that, if things have changed in your life for the worse, that they're going to stay, in a difficult situation or anything like that. You have a choice in terms of how you assess the situation or the perspective that you see on it. Kind of adding to that, a difficult situation is a difficult situation. And if things are feeling like, they're crap in your life, it's wrong to ignore that it feels like crap, but you have a choice to do something with it and to restructure your life in a way that's going to be more suitable for you going forward. So if things are feeling less than positive, and in kind of speaking that, I also want to say a little bit of something, if that's okay, before you go into the Seven of Diamonds, about Mrigasira Nakshatra, because quite often when people are talking about Mrigasira Nakshatra, which is where this eclipse is happening, they focus on the fulfillment aspect of it, because it does bring an energy of seeking fulfillment. But if you recognize that when you're seeking fulfillment, it's usually because you're not satisfied with something. And if you're not satisfied with something, you're going to, by all intents and purposes, want to try to make it better. As a matter of fact, there's a sutra from a text called Taittiriya Brahmana, which has some of the oldest known explanations of the nakshatras in it. Of course, there's a sutra on every single nakshatra there, but the one on Mrigasira Nakshatra is very interesting because it says the diminutive pervadings, which means something is everywhere. Right? So the fulfillment you want is already there. The abundance that you want is already there, but you're perceiving it as diminishing. So the diminutive pervadings of Soma, which is about fulfillment, it's also the essence that's within, plants that gives us vitality. And let's face it, leading a fulfilled life is what makes it feel like we're getting somewhere or growing in life. But the diminutive pervadings of Soma are diffused everywhere. So things seem like they're, diminishing. But actually, it's everywhere. The abundance that you want is everywhere. You just have to find a way of retweaking the situation and pulling all those various little threads of whatever it seems to have kind of come shattering down around you back together and shape something out of it, right?
Yes, and I always think, like, I was studying Mrigasira a long time ago, and I was asking myself, like, what's with this weaving thing? And, why do people weave, like, silk or threads or whatever? And it's because when you weave things together, they become stronger.
Exactly, yes.
And then then they become of use. They become useful for warmth or whatever. Like, it's that weaving that makes it stronger and strengthens it. And I think that that's a huge part of this eclipse as well. It's like coming to a place of strength within yourself, taking all those threads, bringing them together to provide warmth, to provide usefulness, to provide productivity, whatever it is. It's like it can be brought together, but how are you going to do it? In what way are you going to bring together these like disparate? How do you say disparate?
Disparate, yes.
Disparate aspects of your life or yourself. But I think it's more like in the I Ching, they talk a lot about like the internal aspect, like what's actually going on within you. And like, if you just get that aspect of it down, then that starts to impact your outer world. Like if you just bring together the disparate aspects of yourself within yourself, then that, I mean, we talked about this a little bit in the video on my channel. Like that's the start that starts to ripple out into your own life. And so, yeah, like to speak about psychomagic, which is one of the sessions I offer where I give you a symbolic act to do. Well, everybody could do a symbolic act for this eclipse. to bring in that energy by like doing some kind of weaving or knitting or crocheting, but even like working with a loom and doing some kind of weaving and making a blanket or whatever, that would be like a symbolic way to integrate that energy, like a nice ritual to kind of, you know, focus and work on that within yourself. And you, if you have Mrigasira in your birth chart, to like also bring in that energy. So yeah, do you want me to talk about the Seven of Diamonds?
Yeah, sure. I actually just want to add one thing to what you were just saying, which is one of the reasons that this particular eclipse may feel like it's just kind of not going anywhere is because Mars, which is connected to Mrigasira Nakshatra, is facing a lot of opposition from Pluto. And Pluto means, you know, it's heavy duty stuff, right? It's one of those energies that kind of grabs you and shakes you to make you let go of something. Now, in Vedic astrology, we don't usually work a lot with the outer planets, but with such strong energies like this, it's important to go into it. So Mars, on a certain level, and I'm going to use the word, is feeling powerless. So that feeling is probably permeating your life and making it feel like I can't change the things that I'm really wanting to change right now. And so then you're losing, I guess the word I'd want to use is losing hope that those changes are going to work in the way that you're wanting them to work. But what's more important is to just stay productive and focused on what it is that you're actually trying to create. And that kind of has a connection with what you were saying about diamonds as well. You know, it's the pressure and what comes out of that. Yeah.
Exactly. And Pluto, when Pluto's like impacting a planet, it does bring in like a power struggle. So like that fact that, well, the only power that we can truly have control over is within ourselves. And this is the opportunity to focus on that inner strength and inner power. And I mean, I see that already like happening within the whole global climate right now, of like people feeling like, no, I don't want my power to be taken away, and fighting back, but doing it in a way that's like more personal and less like antagonistic. And also like in a way that it's like, no, let's come together. Let's talk about these things. Let's share both opposing sides of the issue. Like, you know, it's a lot about like, let's come together from a place of power rather than like this angry fighting sort of thing. And so I'm already seeing that too, like people that are like, no, I don't want to give up my power. I don't want anybody to tell me what to do. How can I, you know, make the change that I want to see? And people realizing, well, by fighting and being angry, that's not creating the change. So how can I just live my life in an empowered way? And I'm seeing a lot of people just like standing in their power and standing in their truth and not trying to change anybody, but just like being that empowered person themselves. I see so many examples of that right now in this climate of like, we are being told what to do all the time and we don't have as many freedoms as before. And there's definitely like this growing undercurrent of people that are like, you know, trying to keep the power that they've had and stay empowered. And that's really interesting to watch. So I think that will continue very strongly through this as well. And in terms of like the volcano erupting, well, the volcano I think is like already erupting. Like that's already happening, you know, like that's been a long time coming. The rumblings have been happening. It's just the diamond aspect of like, well, you know, people that have wanted to really break from the past or do something different or be something new or, you know, finally let themselves shine. They can do that now, or this will be this eclipse season. And also like Michael mentioned in the video we recorded on my channel, that can be like a 6 month, or even I have a teacher that says like 2.5 years after the eclipse is like the window of time. So like it could be that something now is triggering that change that you ultimately really want in your life. That's like really moving away from that pressure and intensity and everything. And I think it's funny, like I'm not going to share exactly what's happening in my life because it involves too many people, but like I literally feel that like pressure and intensity and like I just need to get out of this volcano, you know. And but also it's a volcano. Like I think that a lot of it is not in your control. Like that should be another thing. It's like the forces of life itself. Like, so if things aren't working out for you or whatever, it's really like there's some aspect of it that is beyond your control. And all you can do is just, like Rihanna says, shine bright like a diamond. Yeah, that's all you can do. But let's talk about the Seven of Diamonds, because the Seven of Diamonds is one of my favorite cards. I'm writing a book. I have been writing a book about the cards of truth for a long time, and the Seven of Diamonds takes up the most pages. It's a fascinating, fascinating card. And Michael already said it. With this eclipse, you want to be in the present moment. That's the Fool card, Zen mind, beginner's mind. And the Seven of Diamonds really reminds us of like, yeah, there's a past, we've gone through things, but what are our present moment opportunities for engaging with the opportunities, or for engaging ourselves with what's actually happening now? And the Seven of Diamonds in a metaphorical sense relates the most to being in a situation that seems impossible, where you're like, literally, I'm on a desert island. There's no food. There is no water. There's nothing here. I'm stranded. I'm by myself. I'm close to dying. There's no hope. What can I do? That is a Seven of Diamonds. And honestly, I will admit it, right now in my life, I definitely feel that. Like, I literally have no idea with particular situations I'm dealing with. How am I going to get out of this? How am I going to come up with a solution? I literally have no clue. There is no hope in sight. There's no stream that you can go to drink from. There's no deer that you can shoot a bow and arrow through and eat for sustenance. There's no bow and arrow. Like, there's nothing you can do. You have the clothes on your back. You're on a deserted island. That's it. So I've studied hundreds of stories of people in these situations. I love these stories. And the way that people deal with this is shown in the Seven of Diamonds ecliptic card, the path of the Seven of Diamonds, which is the Two of Diamonds. And this is all about just doing the bare minimum that you can do in each moment that is possible. So, okay, yeah, there's no beautiful stream, but maybe there's a leaf, a big, huge leaf, and maybe it's going to rain. So, setting that big, huge leaf out to catch the rainwater, maybe that's the best you can do. Maybe that's all you can do. But the people that have survived these really extreme situations, almost dying most of the time with the stories I've read, they do that bare minimum thing. They see the only opportunity that's available. There's only one, or maybe a couple, but they're all terrible options, but they go for them. And that option ends up leading to another option. And of course, it's not the option that seems like it's going to save them. It doesn't even seem good, but it's all they've got, and they go for it. And they continue to go for it and continue to go for it. They almost give up, right? They're at the end of their rope. They almost give up. And then the moment of salvation happens. The rescue boat comes, or they find the path out of the woods, or whatever it is. But the journey there is an act of faith. It's incredibly discouraging. So we bring in the faith aspect of Sagittarius now. It's incredibly discouraging. It requires this deep, deep spiritual connection, and people do end up surviving, but it's only by way of, well, what can I do? Like, I can't do what I want. I can't, my dream isn't coming true here, but what small, little, tiny things can I do in the moment that will hopefully lead me to ultimate survival?
Can I share something with that? While you were saying that, what I was thinking is, when you've been battling something that you're afraid of for so long, it becomes routine, right? And you reach a certain point with it where you just go, what am I going to do? Right? Sure. I can either just go like this and go, sure, come on in, take me, I'm going to die or whatever. But there comes a certain point where there's that word ego again, where you just kind of like go, okay, I'm not going to be able to do something in the way that I think I should be able to do it. Trying to conquer it this way, it's not working. Trying to, pummel it into submission, that's not working. All I can really do is go, there's got to be some other way. I can't think of it right now, so it'll have to be shown to me, because and maybe it won't be shown to me, but I've done everything that I can. And it's at those moments that you focus somewhere else, because you're not focusing on the fear that's there. You've kind of let that fear completely go, that the answer just comes in, because you get into a position where you recognize that the part of you that thought that it could control everything can't control everything, and you're left being in a space of trust, of
and
just
surrender.
having to trust. Yes, exactly.
As you said before, this is the card for surrender.
Exactly. And it's interesting because Mrigasira is what's called a Mula Nakshatra, and it's all about nourishment. So it's interesting that you're bringing up these concepts of nourishment, and it's a sideways facing Nakshatra. So it's always looking for the obvious solutions, right? But sometimes you're expecting that obvious solution to come in the form that you're most used to. And it's not going to come in that way, and you're meant to kind of put your gaze in the other direction rather than just straight forward. For those little answers, like you were saying, with the leaf that's going to fill up with water, in order to, to give you a drink or to nourish you in the way that you weren't expecting. And I liked what you were saying with doing what you can, so you just keep going in the face of what seems to be the impossible. You keep focusing on the things that you know that you can do, and either those things will make a difference or something else can appear that will make a difference. And it may feel to you at that time like you're lost, because your own inner compass that was used to things happening in a certain way kind of gets thwarted, and magnetic north is no longer magnetic north. It's like west or up or down or something like that, and you're just completely confused and lost. But it's at those moments that you tend to recalibrate, because you have to.
Right. And the most fascinating thing is that people go through these situations and never once, and I've studied, like I said, hundreds of these accounts, never once has somebody come out of these situations and been like, that was the worst thing that happened to me. I wish it would have never happened. I regret so much going into the woods that day or stepping into the canyon that day. Never once have they said that. What they have said is, that was terrifying and scary, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm so grateful for that experience. I'm so happy that happened to me. I know I lost my leg or my arm, or I, am now in a wheelchair or whatever, but that experience changed me for the better. I've never felt more of a spiritual connection. I've never been closer to God, whatever. And it's insane, the amount of gratitude and compassion and spiritual evolution that happens through these moments. And I think that sometimes, especially people that are drawn to tarot and astrology and the cards of truth, they are drawn to these things because they're trying to avoid discomfort and difficult situations and bad, things that they consider bad. And, Sagittarius being a sign that's activated right now by the nodes, that's like the bigger picture. It's zooming out, it's seeing this greater whole, and how we need experiences of all kinds in order to make life whole and to make life what it is and to learn what we need to learn. And just because something's uncomfortable or difficult or hard to figure out doesn't mean that it's not the right thing for you or that it's bad for you. That's the diamond that you get at the end of the eruption. It's like a lot of good can come from things that are bad or difficult or hard,
Yeah, and it's interesting that you're mentioning that, because the Sagittarius Gemini axis, it's very big on wanting things to happen in a way that feels right to us. And it doesn't always work that way. As a matter of fact, when I see that axis in a person's chart, I know that generally in the consultation that I'm talking to the person, they're going to take that information and at first go, well, no, I'm supposed to do this. And then they're going to take the information I gave them, turn it into their own, and completely make it in a different way. But they'll take it in some way, probably ignore what I've said at first, because it's somebody trying to impose rules on them. and then go, oh, but maybe this and maybe that, and then explore it. Because about that particular energy, it has a very, much like what you were saying of like, being stranded like on a desert island. Imagine like your whole family deserted you because of a path that you took, and you're left on your own, and people that you used to turn to for guidance, they're no longer there. You've like fallen from grace from them because of a particular direction that you decided you were going to take in your life, right? You can either go back to going, right, I'm going to go back and listen to what those people had to say to me, and you'll probably go through a little bit of that process. Or you can go, I'm going to look at what the greater universe has to offer me in terms of insight and perspective, and recognize that whilst I might have to kind of play by the rules on a certain level and not necessarily my own rules, that I can make this experience my own. And that's the whole thing, is like, with this particular eclipse, it may not be, especially with K2 and Jeshta, it may not be that it's going to be conquered in the way that you see it's going to happen. Right. And that's okay. That's okay. But, part of it is recognizing that the way that you're wanting to approach it can really no longer be. So to keep going on and on about like, this is the way it has to be done, and I have to do it this way, that's not going to work. You're going to have to do it in a completely different way. But it doesn't mean that that you're lost, or that you screwed up, or that everything, has kind of collapsed. And if it seems like everything's kind of collapsed, well, look within that rubble that's around you. See what you can find that's still useful, that you can work with, right?
Yeah, you're going to find an old nasty pop or soda can to fill with rainwater, and it's going to change your life. It's going to let you live another day. That's the thing that happens, is they're like, oh, there's nothing here. All of a sudden they find like a fishing pole, or, a piece of trash that lets them float down the river or whatever. It's like,
exactly.
There's going to be a piece of trash somewhere that you're going to make use of, and you're going to be more grateful for that piece of trash than you've ever been for any luxury item in your life. And that's what I think is happening for people here, and even for myself. And I wanted to also mention, sorry, my brother's cat is wheezing in the background. I feel bad for her. She's okay though. I wanted to mention something else about what you were saying. And now I lost it, but I will get back to it, I'm sure.
Well, I'll share something while you're saying that, which is when I was probably 15 or 16, I had gone out with my mother, and we came back home, and she was putting something in her bedroom, and the radio was playing, and the song "I Fall to Pieces" was on the radio, and she opened the door to her bedroom, and all the plaster of the ceiling had collapsed and was on the floor.
Wow.
And all we could do was laugh. So, even with something seemingly catastrophic, it may not be that you'll laugh at it, but sometimes the universe gives us funny ways of being able to cope with the most difficult of circumstances. So especially to those people who feel lost, or as if they're, something that they had built the stratum of their security around has completely collapsed and fallen apart. There's something in the wake of that for you.
And that's the Mercury aspect of all this. Like Mercury is the laughter and being able to kind of just be amused in the torment. And okay, I remembered what I wanted to say, which is
excellent.
When you have the nodes in Gemini and the Gemini Sagittarius axis, there's always going to be a lot of interplay between your personal empirical experience of life and how you take in the world through your senses, and how you create understanding on an intellectual level. Like, it's really scientific, Gemini, whereas Sagittarius is more about nothing needing to be proven in fact, believing in something without proof, which is, what most people would consider like religion or spirituality, is like, I don't have proof that God exists, but I believe that God exists, and we're already kind of seeing the lines of science and religion being very blended right now in the world, where people are like, I believe in the vaccine, where it's like, well, you can't believe in a scientific thing. You can say it's proven, but as soon as you start to be like, I believe in something scientific, then it's not science anymore. Then it's religion. So we're going to see a lot of the kind of weird intersection of science and religion continue. And on that personal level, back to like the whole survival thing, I think that people who lack faith, people that are struggling with faith and believing in something greater than themselves, believing in their life path, always needing proof of, okay, well, what do I do or whatever. A lot of people potentially that, go to astrology and tarot for these answers. These are moments where sometimes those modalities, they'll give great insight, but they're not always going to show you exactly what's going to happen, because right now will be a testing of faith. Like, well, how much faith do you have? And a lot of the times people that have had the great luck or great misfortune of having an intense survival situation, they didn't have faith. And by the end of it, they believed in a higher power. They believed in something beyond themselves. And that's like the beautiful thing about these situations. But also in terms of this eclipse, it could just be that whatever happens during this eclipse or in the next 6 months or whatever the orb of the eclipse, that you have your faith maybe questioned or strengthened, and you're able to kind of, I think it's a great opportunity at least to be able to kind of define for yourself, what in your life needs that testing and what doesn't. So like any questions of like testing versus faith, belief versus needing to prove it, all these things on like, we're seeing that on like a global kind of level, but also like within yourself, like what should you have more faith in and quit struggling with and testing and needing proof for. Like maybe for some people it's love, like they're always testing their partner, or they're always questioning if the partner loves them, when really it's a beautiful relationship. Just believe in it, have faith it's going to work out. Maybe it could be that for a particular person, or maybe they are always questioning what's going on. Maybe you're questioning what's going on in your life. You always need to predict the future to see what's going to happen rather than just letting life happen. I think a lot of it could be so many things, because this axis is so broad, and it really takes over our whole life, like where we put our faith and what we believe in. But I do think that will be coming up really strongly, and I'm seeing it globally, but it can also impact your personal life in some of those ways and many more that I didn't even mention.
Yeah, I am really inspired to tell a personal experience lately, which is I've been communicating to a lot of people who are in the astrology business, tarot business, etc. And I've had about 4 conversations this week with people going, and this is completely Mrigasira energy, people going, things aren't working. Is it my presentation? Is it how I'm marketing? Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I'm getting too old. Maybe the field is overly saturated. Maybe and in reality, it's a very mutable time. It's a very changeable time. There's a lot of changes that are happening. It's not that, that all those things that you're doing things incorrectly, and maybe perhaps it's good to take a look at those things anyway, because maybe they need some attention. But it's not necessarily that if you go in and change your presentation or change your appearance, or if you're looking for a job, if you spice up your like CV or dress a certain way, it's not necessarily that that's going to bring the solution that you want, right? but it is about, making some changes and refining things and recognizing that you don't necessarily need to change the core or the essence of who you are and what it is that that is important to you and that you are devoted to, and you'll know that inside of yourself. I definitely trust that everybody who's watching this will know what that is inside of themselves, but it's mainly that you need to look at things not happening in the same way.
And it
is a test. It is a very big test. It's a test of not just faith, but also of practicality.
And your long-term commitment, what is the, are you really, like you said before, devoted to this? But I do want to mention though, I always see Gemini as being like the scientist, which what do you do when you're a scientist? You experiment to see what works and what doesn't work. And so I feel like that is another sort of aspect, at least in my life, that has come up a lot. I've noticed that one big lesson I've been learning personally is I used to just put my faith in things. For instance, with my living situations, I'm I'm just going to move to Brooklyn and it's going to work. I'm just going to put down my roots there. It's going to work. It's going to be fine. I'll make it work, just putting my whole faith into it. And then it didn't work. So then I'd be I'm going to live in Minneapolis. Then it's going to work. I'm going to put my roots down there. Everything's going to be great. Just making something, putting so much faith and energy into something without testing it, without trying it, just going full blown into it with everything that I own, all my money, all my heart and soul, but not trying or experimenting or testing it first, just going for it. And right now in my life, I'm looking back and seeing that no, you have to have faith in your idea, your process, but you have to experiment in order to get that larger goal to actually work, especially when it's about big things, when it's about relationships, children, living situations, huge financial risks. Those are not situations to put your faith in. That's why people date. That's why people maybe try having a pet before they have a child. I think that it could be maybe other people are having similar realizations as I am right now of because this is really impacting me on my cusp within, I think a degree or two. But so where are you putting your faith where you shouldn't be putting faith? You should be experimenting here. Okay. Like I said before about medical stuff, no, in some cases we need to have faith. In some cases we need to try things out, especially when it could have long-term consequences, spending hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on a home and moving your whole life and your whole family somewhere. Maybe you should try it first. This is where we can get a really great perspective on where should we experiment more and where should we just go for it. And that is a big, I'm just seeing that in our society right now. I can't imagine how people are experiencing that in themselves. I'm experiencing it in one area, but I bet I'd like to see if you are experiencing this in the comments.
Definitely post
what's going on.
Exactly. Well, thanks for coming on today.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I feel like we always uncover so much when we're together.
I know. And to share with everybody, we sat down before this because I was looking at the eclipse and I was going, it's speaking to me, but it's speaking to me on such a minute level. But I knew that once we got into discussing it, then it would just, kind of turn into something else.
Yes, and
because it would make itself more apparent in that particular level. Do you want to tell people about your website and your YouTube channel and how they can get in contact with you if they want to book with you?
Yeah. So it's just my name, Nicole Brenny at NicoleBrenny.com. And if you want to learn about my classes, that's NicoleBrenny.com/classes. You'll find it on there. But the Cards of Truth is the one I'm doing now. I'm very excited about that. And then I have my own channel, which is youtube.com/listen to the stars. I mentioned it earlier. And we have a video together, Michael and I, that we just did about the precursor to this eclipse. So definitely watch that for more context. And hopefully those links will be below. But I also wanted
definitely.
I want to tell everyone, especially if you're coming from my channel, that Michael is an amazing astrologer and intuitive and teacher. Especially, I learned so much about the Nakshatras from him and Rahu and Ketu, which was really amazing for me. And so I highly recommend studying with Michael as well as getting a session. And he just did a reading for me the other day. It was super helpful. And I hadn't had a reading for like a year, so it was great.
Well, thank you, and I'll put my stuff down below too. But definitely send me your information, and I'll put it in the section below for everybody.
Yes. Also, I just want to tell everyone, have a wonderful eclipse and don't be scared or anything.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, you're probably already, if you're going to be feeling it on the eclipse, you're probably already feeling it. That's usually what happens, is like you already start to feel it. You already kind of know, like if you're watching now, you probably already know what this is going to be about. Like that's how it works. It's
exactly.
Clean up.
Definitely. Well, thank you.
Yes. Have a great day.
And thanks, everybody. Bye now.